At minus 50 degrees Celsius, a simple truck journey becomes a battle against extreme cold. Deep inside Siberia, drivers travel across frozen highways where the road can disappear beneath blowing snow, engines must be protected from freezing, and a mechanical failure can become a serious problem. But these trucks keep moving, carrying essential cargo through one of the coldest inhabited regions on Earth. If you want to see what one complete day on this frozen road really looks like, subscribe and come with us. Before the journey begins, the truck must be prepared for the cold. Outside, the temperature is still far below freezing, and every exposed metal surface is covered with frost. The driver checks the tires, lights, fuel system, and engine area before leaving. Inside the cabin, the heater slowly brings the temperature up. In Siberia, preparation isn't just routine. It can determine whether the truck completes its journey safely. The first challenge is getting the engine ready. In extreme cold, diesel fuel becomes harder to handle, batteries lose performance, and engine oil becomes much thicker. The driver watches the gauges carefully as the engine begins to warm. Nothing is rushed. The goal is to bring the machinery gradually into its normal operating range before the truck leaves the safety of the settlement and heads onto the frozen highway. As the truck leaves the settlement, the landscape changes almost instantly. Buildings disappear behind the snow, and the highway stretches into an enormous white wilderness. There may be no nearby service station, no busy traffic, and no quick help if something goes wrong. The driver keeps a steady speed while watching the road surface carefully. Every kilometer now takes the truck deeper into the isolated Siberian landscape. Out here, the road itself becomes part of the challenge. Packed snow can hide patches of ice, while drifting powder can reduce traction without warning. The driver makes small, controlled steering adjustments and avoids sudden braking or acceleration. The truck's heavy weight helps maintain momentum, but it also demands careful control. On a road this remote, smooth driving isn't just about comfort, it helps protect the vehicle and conserve fuel. Outside, Siberia is frozen solid. Inside the truck, the driver creates a completely different environment. The cabin heater works continuously to keep the interior warm while frost builds up on the windows. The windshield must remain clear enough to see the road ahead, and every control has to work reliably. During a long winter drive, the cabin isn't simply a place to sit, it becomes the driver's warm, controlled workspace in the middle of an enormous frozen landscape. One of the driver's most important tasks is keeping visibility. At minus 50 degrees, moisture can freeze rapidly on exposed glass, while blowing snow can cover the windshield from the outside. The truck's heating and ventilation systems work continuously to keep the glass clear. The driver watches the road far ahead and adjusts the cabin conditions whenever visibility begins to fall. On a frozen highway, seeing the road early is critical. The cold affects more than the driver and the road. Fuel itself becomes a critical part of the journey. At extremely low temperatures, diesel can develop wax-like crystals that restrict fuel flow through filters and lines. That is why trucks operating in Siberia use fuel and preparation methods suited to severe winter conditions. Keeping the fuel system flowing smoothly is essential, because without a reliable fuel supply, even the strongest engine cannot keep moving. Inside the fuel system, the filter becomes one of the engine's most important defenses against the cold. It must remove contamination while still allowing fuel to flow reliably. In severe winter conditions, drivers and mechanics pay close attention to fuel temperature and filter condition. A restriction here can reduce the amount of fuel reaching the engine. That is why the fuel system is checked carefully before and during long journeys through Siberia. After hours on the frozen highway, the truck reaches a remote fuel stop. Here, even a simple refueling operation has to be handled carefully. Fuel lines, pumps, and equipment are exposed to temperatures far below freezing. The driver checks the truck before taking on more fuel, while the engine continues running to avoid unnecessary cooling. In this environment, every minute outside the warm cabin is a reminder of how extreme Siberian winter can be. With the fuel tank topped up, the driver closes the cabin and prepares to leave. The engine has remained warm, and the truck is ready for another long stretch of empty road. As the headlights disappear from the fuel station, there is almost nothing around except snow, darkness, and frozen forest. For the driver, this is where concentration matters most, because the next settlement may still be hundreds of kilometers away. Night has now completely taken over the highway. The truck's headlights create a narrow tunnel of visibility through the darkness, while the surrounding forest disappears into the black horizon. There are no streetlights here, only the road markings and the faint glow from the dashboard. The driver maintains a steady pace, knowing that fatigue and poor visibility can make an already difficult journey even harder. Then the weather begins to change. Wind pushes loose snow across the highway, and visibility slowly becomes worse. The road ahead is still visible, but the landscape around it starts disappearing into a moving white haze. The driver reduces speed and keeps the truck steady in its lane. In Siberia, a snowstorm doesn't have to look dramatic to become dangerous, it only needs to hide the road for a few moments. Hours have passed, but the journey is far from over. Inside the cabin, the driver remains focused on the narrow road ahead. The heater keeps the interior warm while the engine continues working steadily outside. Dashboard instruments provide a constant stream of information about the truck's condition. Beyond the windshield, there are no city lights or buildings, only darkness, snow, and the faint reflection of the headlights on the frozen road. While the truck moves through the darkness, the engine is doing most of the hard work. Deep inside the vehicle, fuel is being burned, pistons are moving, and cooling and lubrication systems are protecting the machinery. The driver cannot see these components directly, so the dashboard becomes the main connection to the engine. Temperature, pressure, and warning indicators help reveal whether everything is operating normally in the extreme cold. The night is slowly beginning to fade, but the temperature remains brutally low. After hours of driving, the truck continues across the frozen highway toward the next destination. The first hint of daylight appears behind the distant forest, revealing endless snow-covered terrain. Inside the cabin, the driver remains focused and alert. The journey has already lasted for hours, yet this remote Siberian road still has a long way to go. After hours of continuous driving, the truck reaches a safe roadside stopping point. Before continuing, the driver makes a quick inspection. Tires, lights, visible hoses, and the engine area are checked for anything unusual. In this extreme cold, even a small mechanical problem can become more difficult to handle. The inspection takes only a short time, but it gives the driver confidence before returning to the long, empty Siberian highway. Back on the highway, the truck continues deeper into the Siberian wilderness. The morning light is brighter now, but the landscape remains almost completely white. There are no nearby towns, no traffic, and very few signs of human life. The driver maintains a steady speed while the heavy truck carries its cargo toward the distant destination. Mile after mile, the same frozen landscape continues beyond the windshield. The truck is not traveling empty. Its cargo may be essential supplies destined for communities far from the major cities. Every additional ton adds weight to the vehicle and changes how it behaves on snow and ice. The driver therefore keeps acceleration and braking smooth, avoiding sudden movements. In a place where roads can stretch for hundreds of kilometers without help, protecting both the cargo and the truck is part of the job. Under the hood, the engine is producing intense heat even while the outside air remains far below freezing. A cooling system continuously carries heat away from the cylinders and other critical components, keeping the engine within its designed operating range. At the same time, oil circulates through moving parts to reduce friction and protect them from wear. Outside, Siberia is frozen. Inside the engine, temperatures are high enough to demand constant control. The engine isn't the only system affected by extreme cold. A truck's battery can also lose a significant amount of performance as temperatures fall. That makes electrical power especially important during a Siberian winter. The battery must provide enough energy for starting and for the truck's essential electrical systems. Once the engine is running, the charging system helps maintain the electrical supply while the truck continues its long journey. Stopping a heavily loaded truck on a frozen highway requires careful control. Cold temperatures can affect air pressure systems, brake components, and the grip between the tires and the road. The driver therefore avoids sudden braking and keeps a safe, controlled speed. Inside the truck, the braking system must maintain reliable pressure while the vehicle travels through snow and ice. On this remote road, controlled stopping is just as important as keeping the truck moving. Brakes can only work as well as the tires allow. On packed snow and ice, the available grip is much lower than on dry pavement. The truck's tires must maintain contact with the road while carrying a heavy load. That is why smooth steering, gradual braking, and controlled acceleration matter so much. Every movement is carefully managed to keep the heavy vehicle stable on the frozen surface. The highway now reaches one of Siberia's most unusual landscapes, a frozen river crossing. During the winter season, some routes pass directly over thick natural ice. Before heavy vehicles use such a crossing, the ice must be carefully assessed for safety and load-bearing conditions. The truck moves slowly across the frozen surface, maintaining a steady path. Beneath the enormous vehicle is solid ice, while hundreds of meters of freezing water remain hidden below. After crossing the frozen river, the truck reaches the opposite shore and returns to solid ground. The landscape looks almost unchanged: snow-covered forest, open sky, and an endless white road. But the crossing has marked another important stage of the journey. The truck continues forward with its heavy cargo, leaving the frozen river behind and heading toward the next section of this remote Siberian route. After another long stretch of frozen highway, signs of civilization finally begin to appear. A few distant buildings and utility poles emerge from the snowy landscape. The journey is not over yet, but the truck is getting closer to its destination. After traveling through darkness, snowstorms, frozen roads, and vast empty wilderness, reaching a populated area feels like a major milestone for both the driver and the machine. The road is becoming busier as the truck approaches its destination. More utility poles appear, the frozen forest begins to thin, and small buildings can now be seen beside the highway. After such a long journey, the driver still keeps the same careful control. The cargo has traveled across one of the harshest environments on Earth, and now only a short distance remains before the truck finally reaches the community it was sent to serve. After hundreds of kilometers through extreme winter conditions, the truck finally reaches its destination. The long highway is behind it now, along with the frozen river, snowstorms, and endless wilderness. The driver carefully brings the heavily loaded truck into the settlement and prepares to stop. What began as a journey through one of the coldest environments on Earth is finally reaching its final stage. The final stage of the journey has now begun. The truck is positioned at the unloading area, where the cargo can finally be delivered. After spending hours in extreme cold, the driver carefully prepares the vehicle for unloading. The cargo that traveled across frozen highways and remote wilderness has reached the community safely. For a long-distance winter trucker, this quiet moment marks the completion of a difficult journey. After hundreds of kilometers through extreme cold, snow-covered roads, frozen rivers, and endless wilderness, the truck has finally completed its journey. Every kilometer required careful driving, reliable machinery, and preparation for conditions few places on Earth can match. This is what makes winter transportation in Siberia so remarkable. If you enjoyed this journey and want to discover more incredible stories from around the world, subscribe to the channel and stay with us for the next documentary.